small group, so I'm hoping that a lot of what we talk about today, somehow or another through word of mouth, is distributed throughout the community. In addition, we will go ahead and be posting everything online so that folks can either bring down the materials, the slides, and things like that. If I was in your shoes and you saw me standing up here or sitting up here, you'd probably say, who the heck is this person? My name is Rob Duca. Currently I'm serving as the chair of the Communications Committee of the Somerset Owners Association. My wife Diana and I moved to Somerset in 2005. Prior to that, I was an associate dean for the School of Pharmacy at the University of California, San Francisco. Before that, I ran surgery at the Med Center, which basically consisted of keeping 120 surgeons generally headed in the same direction. And the 10 years before that, though, I was involved in terms of medical research and trying to improve kidney transplant survival and patient survival. So sort of like everything in life goes full circle, and I'm somehow or another returned to looking at statistics. And so that's how I kind of got into this role here. So what we're going to talk about is the strategic planning survey that was conducted last summer. This was an initiative joint that was requested by the board to help guide the efforts of the Strategic Planning Committee, of which Chuck Walker has been the past chair of that, and also the Communication Committee in terms of trying to improve things. So what we're going to talk about is the survey process at the beginning, and then talk about the number survey, the data analysis method, stratification of responses, or how we group things, and how to understand what the graphs mean. Then we're going to present each question survey results, then we'll have some summary thoughts. And what we're going to try to do this evening is a 1-hour presentation of this, plus the manatee usage, plus crime statistics, plus some information on forming a neighborhood watch group. And so maybe it will be best if any of the questions and discussions comes at the end, so that folks want to leave after an hour. Get that Okay, so as I mentioned, it was conducted this summer. The number of homeowners that we surveyed was 1,950. There's like 2,400 assessed properties in Somerset, but we excluded all the renters, all the developers, and all the homeowners that are not in good standing. In other words, they haven't kept up their dues. Number of survey responses we got back is 515. Of that, we had 465 returned electronically. We sent out 3 separate emails during this time period to folks, asking them to respond to the survey, and email belonging and conducted. For some 500 plus folks, I think it's about 500 folks, that either had invalid emails or email accounts that would bounce back to Somerset email because the account was crashed. We sent out 1 mail survey to all of those folks, and we got some 50 back. In addition to the overall response, what we did once we got all the results back into an Excel spreadsheet is that we went ahead and grouped these responses into different groupings or stratified them. We looked at Sierra Canyon versus Somerset. We looked at single married versus family units. And then my wife Diana got roped in by me in terms of categorizing all of the streets in Somerset into one of these categories. Sierra Canyon is pretty self-explanatory. Somerset is anything that isn't a gated street or in the village. All in all, we did 104 different graphs, and we went ahead and did 52 different comparisons, but we're not going to show you that because that's pretty much what we see. So how did we do all in all? Actually pretty good. And the way to look at this is different sorts of categories, and what we're going to focus here is initially. And here's the 1950 possible owners that we have. Here's our response to 2015. We have a 26% response rate. And according to the literature, when you do an external survey to the general folks out there. If you get 15 to 20% of the folks to actually open the survey instrument, that's a good thing. And usually you get then a 10 to 15% response on the 15 to 20% that actually opened it. So for us to end up having a 26% response is actually quite good by the standards of doing these type of surveys. How does that break down? Well, actually it's pretty comparable. Sierra Canyon, 158 out of 622 or 25%. Somerset, 27%. So it's kind of, comparable all the way around. We then went ahead and looked at the fact we were able, in one of the databases that the SOA maintains, we were able to look and see by the name of the people on the account, the number of folks on the account, whether it's a single or married individual, or whether it was a family unit having multiple folks in the same account, which would then mean some sort of family unit. Of course, the vast majority of folks in Sierra Canyon are single or married. There is, I think, 9 units that have multiple people in the accounts. We just classified as a family unit. Splits up 13 and 15 because of rounding error to give you that 27% there. So it's about evenly matched in terms of the Somerset folks being family or single married. And then, of course, looking at this response there, all the folks here belong to Sierra Canyon, and then we looked at these 27% and broke them down into gated, general Somerset gated village, and unknown actually refers to the fact in the database that there are missing addresses for some of the accounts, or the addresses are actually in error. The names of the streets are in error, so we just classify them as Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to look at the very first question. There's only 13 questions in the survey. We're going to look at the very first question. And what we're going to do is look at this question in 4 different ways. Same question in 4 different ways to get a little bit up to speed about how we're going to look at all the rest of the class. So the easiest way to look at a survey like this is to go ahead and just tabulate the number of responses and count them up. So if you look at this response count on the vertical scale here is the different things that people could have responded to, and down here is the number of responses for each of these categories. This first question, and there was a sheet in the back, you haven't seen it, it actually has the actual wordings for all of these questions. The very first question allowed you to mark as many different answers as you wanted about why you wanted to end purchasing in Somerset. So out of those 515 responses, we actually had 2,800 responses, tick marks on these sorts of things. And you can see that the biggest things are environs, lifestyle, and amenities. Those are the 3, they're all over 350. Now, another way of looking at the exact same question is to take these responses and put them in terms of percent of responses. So in this one, we have the response percent, same categories, except that instead of counting up the responses, we're saying out of these 2,800 responses, what percent of those responses apply to each category. And you can see that the data doesn't change. It's just the manner in which we're presenting it. So the 3 biggest things, again, are environs, lifestyle, and amenities. Now this seems kind of straightforward and simple, but when we start doing other kinds of comparisons, it really helps to be able to put things in a standard way in terms of percentages. So here's the same question, but we've now stratified it in terms of Somerset responses in the red and Sierra Canyon responses in the blue. And if you look at this graph, you could all of a sudden maybe think, well, the people in Sierra Canyon don't feel as strongly about each of these items as the people in Somerset. But that's just actually an artifact. We have a smaller sample size in terms of the Sierra Canyon folks compared to the Somerset folks. And so counting up the responses doesn't enable you to be able to actually understand how folks are feeling about a particular issue. But when you end up taking the Somerset responses and saying what percent of the Somerset responses are in a particular category, and you do the same thing for Sierra Canyon, you see that they're virtually identical, all the way along the line. This, from looking at these 104 graphs, I have to tell you, is one of the most amazing things that I kind of came upon as we went through this, is the fact of how consistent people in Somerset, no matter where they are, look at things. They look at things very much in the same way. So we're not going to end up doing all these 104 slides showing you gated versus, non-gated Sierra Canyon versus village, the married versus single. I just want you to appreciate the fact that when we do these comparisons going through the slides, that they're consistent. And everybody seems to look at things very much in the same sort of way. So, the second question that we have is, what "It's great to be home" thing means to you as an owner. Chuck and his committee decided that there were 3 questions that they didn't want to put any kind of supposition or bias on how people responded. And so they had 3 questions that were text questions, and I'll identify them as we go through this. This is the first one. And then what happened is Chuck and his committee members took the actual written responses from everybody who responded on this question, and then categorized them into one of these sorts of categories. And you can see by far and away, the biggest thing and reason or the reason that it's great to be home means to you as an owner is the overall lifestyle and community. The idea of whatever it is that we belong to seems to be consistent and constant across all of Somerset. Amenities seems to be the next biggest thing. Non-Somerset has things to do with, like, what is it? I love skiing. My family lives here in Reno. Things of that sort. Staff list is one of the artifacts of text questions. Somebody will end up actually responding on one question with something that doesn't actually relate to the question, but some folks had certain things that they wanted to address in terms of staff issues. This next question was one in which you could respond with a maximum of 3 tick marks about what of the existing amenities do you think the SOA should focus on improving now. And again, what's amazing is that cardio, aquatic, safety, and the trail system all are pretty constant across these 2 groups. Those are the top 4 things in terms of what folks think need to be improved in terms of current amenities. Regarding safety, what does safety mean? We're going to talk a little bit later about crime, but there's a feeling, particularly because it's a little bit larger in terms of the Somerset folks, about the crossing and volume of traffic and things, from some of the comments that folks said about the speeding that seems to occur and not stopping in crosswalks and things like that. Amenities and events that should perhaps be eliminated. This is the second biggest thing that struck me as about the similarity of responses that seem to occur here. So this again was the text question. Remember, we had 515 responses. Out of that 515 responses, there were 325 written responses to them. And, oh, I'm sorry, I got the wrong slide here, I apologize. Yeah. Out of that 515, there were 192 written responses to this question about eliminating things. And what was rather mind-boggling is that 140 folks took the opportunity to write no, none, I'm happy, I don't use the tennis courts, but I want them. And so folks like all of the amenities, and the vast majority of folks, over 70%, actually took the time to write, don't eliminate anything, I like everything. And this is actually a very conservative way of going ahead and looking at this information. If you have a text question in which it says, what is it that you want to eliminate? And if you choose not to answer it, chances are it probably means don't eliminate anything. And if you add the actual 300 blank ones that people didn't put down, no, I'm happy, keep everything the way it is, you would have over 90% of the people in Somerset saying they like everything the way it is, don't eliminate it. Staff list, there were things that people happened to comment, like maybe the craft room isn't being used a lot. Maybe we should do something with that. Change, what is it, the sprinkler system out there on the parkway because it's getting the cars wet, things of that sort. And so any of these sorts of list of items got referred over to the staff. Other had to do with things like the craft room, or not the craft room, but changing small minor things that don't seem to group into any of these other big categories. New amenities that should be considered to increase the appeal of Somerset. By far and away, the pool issue, referring to staff, has to do with all sorts of various issues that can do with having more silverware and things in terms of the kitchen, to doing revamping of the locker rooms, things like that. So there are staff issues that need to be addressed. Non-applicable here means people put down none, no. I just arrived in Somerset, so I can't really comment. But the pool seems to be the biggest issue. Fitness seems to be another issue. Non-SOA has to do with things like, it would be really great if we had bus service to shopping, more direct access to New Road from I-80 to Sierra Canyon, things of that sort that aren't really within the purview of Somerset to be able to address with this way. This is the last of the questions that had to do with the Strategic Planning Committee's questions, and then we're going to go to the Communication Committee questions. This one said, how willing are we to increase assessment for additional amenities? And this one I broke out differently because I thought it would be warranted. Maybe there would be a difference in terms of whether you were in a gated community or a village in terms of assessments. And again, the consistency with which anybody in Somerset looks at things is truly kind of staggering. Overall, it's basically a 40-60% split. It's actually 39% no when you take everybody together. 61% say yes with presentation, yes with votes, or yes, just yes. But right across the board, Sierra Canyon, gated Somerset, Somerset, Village, or unknown. It's all basically the same. Okay? All right. So now we're going to switch over to looking at communication within Somerset. And what the Communication Committee was trying to address is what kind of way can we improve communicating with the community, and which ways can possibly the community want to communicate with the board or the committees. So the preferred methods for receiving SOA board information, by far and away, email, and then Melissa mail became the next biggest thing. This seems to be a kind of a common theme when people are looking at this kind of information overload that we all kind of face, is that rather than going to look for information, we somehow or another want to push towards it. And so folks are not going to take the time to necessarily go and click around perhaps a website. We'd rather just get it coming to them. So you'll notice that now we don't have Melissa now, we have Lauren letters. And so you'll be seeing those coming out as a means of trying to get information out to folks. Preferred methods for receiving events and programs information. Again, same sort of thing. Email, and then Melissa mail becomes the thing. The Somerset Mag is something too. From when the survey was initially being drafted, we had a focus group of some 20 folks to kind of represent the cross-section of Somerset, families, single people, retired, working folks, and we asked them these questions and said, what do you think about it? And one of the things about the Somerset Mag is that, particularly from the people who have families and were working, was that this is the way that they actually looked at information in terms of Somerset. They'd be, around the dinner table, and a magazine comes, and they scan it, and they look at events and activities that they do want to do with their kids, things of that sort and stuff. But they aren't taking the time to go up in terms of the website. We also had a question on our committee of, I don't use Facebook. I don't have a Facebook account. But I thought, well, gosh darn, maybe we're behind the times. And there are people out there using Facebook, and the entire community is getting their information this way. And what we did here is looked at the response count on it, and only 148 folks out of the 515 responded, or 29% used social media. The vast majority of them use Facebook, a little bit Twitter, LinkedIn, and something else. But it doesn't seem that the social media is the way that most folks in Somerset are getting their information. Preferred methods for communicating to the SLA board. Again, email, way above anything else. I don't know if there's much more to say other than that. That's the way folks like to do. One of the things that we've had a lot of comments about is the fact that My Somerset website is perhaps not user-friendly, and it's not used as well as it could be. And I know when we first became part of the communication committee, I had the darndest time just figuring out how to log in. And I'm relatively good at computer kind of stuff. And for me to figure out how to get in, said, well, maybe this is one of the issues that we ended up having. Roughly 50% of the folks use it, slightly more in terms of Somerset as opposed to Sierra Canyon. And it's roughly a 50% split, using the website, 50%. There are a number of different areas on the website. One of the things that we're probably going to do over the next year or two is try to redesign it somewhat so that it will become maybe more user-friendly. And so we asked folks which areas that they actually access with ease. Seems like the board information is pretty good. For trying to look for fitness sports programs is okay, and then the social programs, folks are doing that. They're not using it too much for the online registration. And what's surprising, this is a minor surprise to me, but is that the My Somerset website has this My Profile, which is actually a rather sophisticated directory for all of us here in Somerset. It's the means where you can put in Rob Duca, where you live, telephone numbers, contact information, interests, all sorts of different information. And then you can actually particularly choose which items you want to release as a public distribution to somebody. So I could say, here's my home phone number, but I don't want my cell phone number given out. Or I don't want any of my phone numbers given out, but this is my address. And yet, not many folks either are aware of it or even utilize it. And that's something that maybe in the future it would be good if we tried to make a push to do that. As a community, I know I found myself in meetings or in restaurants that I meet and talk with somebody, and then I say, gosh, it'd be really nice to know who that was, and there's no way of doing it unless I've actually gotten their name or something like that one particular time. If you do not use My Somerset, what's the best approach to increase the use? The idea of having an online video that kind of quick folks into the thing of learning about what the various features are and how to do things seems to be the preferred method. But we won't probably do anything like that until we figure out we've got the actual permanent website out with the features that we want people to use. So that's it for the questions. So summary thoughts about it. The first thing, like I said, is no matter where we live or what our family status is, we view our community the same. We're truly much more alike than different. I tend a relatively good number of meetings that have happened in terms of board and community sorts of things. And even though you go to these meetings and it seems like people are on opposite sides of the spectrum of the universe from each other, the thing that this survey seems to show us is that really, we really are much more alike, regardless of where we live in Somerset and what our family status is. We seem to look at the world in the same sort of way. We truly love our lifestyle and sense of community. When we look at some of the responses about environments or community or lifestyle, it's almost like the general gestalt of this place. The feeling that folks have when they live here seems to be the thing that they just love. So that feeling of coming in over that first roundabout, that you're someplace away from Reno and everything else. The current and future focus should be aquatic fitness, trail, and safety. Again, there's the question about what are we going to improve of our current amenities and what do we want to improve or add for new ones, and the same things keep popping up. The pool, the exercise, trails, same sort of thing. Do not eliminate any current amenities. Vast majority, like everything that we currently have. Again, 70% of the people who responded said, don't eliminate anything. I don't play tennis, but don't eliminate it. I like having it here. And then if you look at all the folks who didn't even respond to it, it's 90% of the folks don't want anything limited, whether they use it or not. There's a willingness to increase the assessment after presentations, owner vote, and a 60-40 positive split. And again, that's constant across all Somerset, no matter what group was responding. We prefer push emails, listen mail, or warn letters now when receiving SOA board activity event information. We prefer email when communicating with the SOA board. There's a 50-50% split. I'm using the My Somerset website. And as an owner, you really may want to think about going online and doing something about that My profile. And again, you can say whatever the items are that you actually want to distribute for public distribution. And a concluding perspective, again, this survey was created to help the strategic planning committee and the communication committee kind of planning where things should be focused or how things should be looked at in the coming years. We currently have these 2,400 assessed properties. The estimated final size of Somerset's build-out is some 3,400 to 3,600. The growth is expected over the next 6 to 7 years, 2019. And this actually represents a 50% growth in the homes and people that are going to be in Somerset once everything is built out. That's a pretty dramatic growth to have occurred in less than a decade. And strategically, the key for us as owners is going to be how to maintain and enhance our current amenities in the face of this rapid growth and usage. And I was going to, Chris, from our communication committee, was I think going to be the individual who's actually going to present this aspect on current amenity usage, the second part of our tonight's presentation. But he isn't able to be here, and so it's you do it. Right? Here's Rob. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at clubhouse usage and trends, the town center amenities, pool usage, Canyon 9. We're going to look at the raw data first and then graphs because it's just easier to understand. And we're going to have some summary thoughts and stuff. So, where? So, looking at this, don't get too bogged down here in the numbers, but what we have here are accounts with the club, the town center access, the number up here. And you'll notice in 2013 it actually decreases compared to these numbers up here. This is probably an artifact of us doing the strategic planning survey because one of the difficulties that we found out in this SOA is that the staff here was trying to maintain 3 different databases. There is one that goes ahead and has to do with like the website aspects. There's one in which you pay your finances and it's the official record of who's here because they're collecting the money in terms of assessments. And then there's a point of sale system here that when you come into the clubhouse to use something, you scan your card. The difficulty is that because these systems came up in a haphazard fashion, never being integrated, the staff has got to try to maintain manually 3 different systems by transferring information. The phone number gets updated, things of that sort. So in terms of the strategic planning survey, there was a big push to clean up data, and that's what's actually resulted. The takeaway, though, is that figured that there's roughly 1,500 accounts with access, and we have over 5,000 people of those 1,500 accounts that are using these facilities or amenities here. In the clubhouse, again, we had 65,000 visits in 2013, and this is the annual percent change. We had a 17% increase in using the clubhouse this past year. So when you look at the strategic planning survey and you see this thing about the exercise facilities, the fitness, the rooms, you can see where it's coming from and what folks are feeling. This is a graph of that information. It's an area graph. And the reason we're using an area graph is that you can see dramatically this increase, this 17% that occurred in this last year, and there's a 25% here, and then everything in between there. But one of the things that has come up, I've heard anecdotally, is that folks will sometimes go ahead and say, well, the reason we can't get in there and use stuff is because everybody's got guests and bringing other folks in. And what you find out is that guest paying fees is an incredibly small amount. Remember, us, the people who live here, are the ones that have the vast majority of the folks. And the guest use in the punch card, again, is an insignificant amount in terms of the usage of the clubhouse. This one has to do with the pool. Again, same number of accounts and same 5,000 folks. What you see here is actually a decrease from 2012 to 2013, from 22,000 visits to 20,000 visits. And if you do it looks like this. And the question comes, well, why is that? And there are 3 reasons I think we talked about this. I actually think that this pool may actually, and particularly from some of the comments that were written in terms of the strategic planning survey about improving things, this may be what's known as a limited resource. You finally hit a point at which people choose not to use the resource because it's overutilized. So it may be the thing when you look at it the last couple of years, it's always been just under 20,000, and then in 2012, more folks went, and then people just finally said, I've had it with kids running around, there's no place to sit, I'm not going. And so it's actually a self-limiting resource. The other 2 issues that came up that folks thought that there might be a decrease is that this summer we had the fire issue, the smoke issue, which pretty much started to keep people indoors. And then I heard also that there was a change in terms of the school schedule, which also probably reduced the number of folks that were coming. Again, this part here, and anecdotally, you hear folks go ahead and say, well, the reason why is because they're allowing everybody else into the pool area, grandkids and everything. And again, you can see that the number of folks who may have been the case back here more, but definitely it's a small percentage compared to the rest of the folks. The last one has to do with Canyon 9 usage. This one, all of a sudden, you have an increase in terms of the accounts, and there's now 6,000 folks because the Canyon 9 is also accessible, of course, to Sierra Canyon. And what you see is that it's roughly constant. It's actually a 2% decrease. And so what you see here is roughly something above 3,000 members, us, people who live here that are using the Canyon 9. We have a number of guests that seems pretty constant, but our increase actually, or this higher number, has to do with public play. It seems that there are more folks that are coming, from Reno, choosing to play 9 holes here at the Canyon. And then this one is kind of just an interesting slide, since they're collecting that information too. You can go ahead and put it here. This is food and beverage sold out at Snack Bar here. So we have a revenue source. It seems that folks, non-alcohol has decreased. Alcohol is and food is following behind. The alcohol is a big thing. So if we want more amenities out at the pool, we know how to do it. Start having servers or something like that. Happy hour. Now get everybody out there and drive the kids out. Summary thoughts. The clubhouse usage is increasing dramatically. Constant annual increases year over year. And again, last year, 17% increase. And then Lauren was just mentioning, they just put in the information for January this year, and it's like 2,000 more visits than last year. So we don't know if that trend's going to continue, but it seems that folks want to use the clubhouse. Pool usage may have hit the maximum, self-limiting. It doesn't mean that the demand isn't there. Again, when you look at the strategic planning survey results, the aquatic use keeps coming up as the #1 issue. It may be the thing that it's just hit its max, and folks just aren't going to end up going down there anymore and driving up the usage. The Canyon 9 usage is stable. Public play as a percentage is increasing. And the snack bar is becoming a revenue source. And this was a slide that was on the strategic planning survey, and I just tossed it up here for the hell of it because the issues are still the same. When you look at what needs to be improved, when you look at what folks want in terms of amenities for the future, the same issues keep coming up. And I think what's really important is that folks as a community, we as a community, start to truly appreciate that it ain't going to get better with more and more homes being built and more people coming. We need to plan how we're going to end up getting more facility space or something to end up addressing this when we get there. That's it. I'm out of there. Julian's on.
Question before you go, okay? Is your PowerPoint presentation going to be available on the Somerset website?
Yeah.
Good, okay.
Exactly.
Thanks, Brian.
Thank you.
My name's Julie Stoic. My husband and I moved here in June of this year, but we bought our home about 2.5 years ago. And we moved from Sioux City, Iowa. We both retired. I was a dean at a community college in Sioux City for about 24 years. And so we're loving Reno. When I heard about this, we took the strategic planning survey just after we moved here. And when I heard about the communication committee, there was an opening on it. So I'm the newest communication member. I volunteered to be on it because I wanted to learn about Somerset. And we have, since the time the survey was done, tried to dig a little deeper into some of those issues that surfaced during the survey. And one of those issues was the safety issue. And so since I've been on the committee since the time that we've gotten these crime statistics, I volunteered to do them for this segment of the presentation. You'll note, you remember that on the survey there was a safety component that was one of the bigger issues. And as we're drilling down more and finding out more, we feel that probably is because of the crosswalks and some of the safety issues with the crosswalks, but we wanted to make sure. So we contacted the Reno Police Department to see what kind of crime statistics they gathered for us and what they were for the Somerset area. And so that's what I'm going to present today. So what we have is the crime statistics that were taken from October of 2012 to September of 2013. And basically, the information that we got from the Reno Police was the different information for the beats. And the Reno Police have divided, there, I have to see these, Dave, so if you can see them, okay, but I have to see them as I talk about them. They have divided Reno into 31 different police beats. And each of these beats represents a different area for the city. And the statistics are collected for the crime committed, the crime date, and the time of the crime. Somerset is actually represented in 2 different beats, beat 30 and beat 32. And this next slide shows you basically the areas of Reno. And here we are in Somerset, and you'll notice that actually in beat 30, there's quite a bit that's across the interstate that's really not in Somerset. And also in beat 32, this is right about by the second roundabout. So you can see that there's a lot of area also in 32 that's not Somerset. So what we did was we looked at the crimes that were reported. And basically, these are the crimes that are reported: assault, battery, burglary, grand larceny, grand theft auto, murder, robbery, and sexual assault. And we looked at the period, and during that period, that year, there were a total of 5,500 crimes that were represented in Reno. 179 of those crimes were reported in the 2 beats in which Somerset is in, 30 and 32. However, we dug a little deeper, and we found that only 21 of those 179 were actually committed within the borders of Somerset. So we were able to dig in a little deeper, take those areas away. And when we looked at all of Reno, that represented less than 1% of all crimes that were committed within Reno, 0.4%. And we thought that was pretty remarkable. So as we looked at that, we thought, yeah, probably what we need to do in this safety area is focus a little more maybe on the crosswalk area. And one of our committee members who's here today, Dave, are you here? I can't see you. Anyway, we have one, is now working with the Reno Police Department to see if we might not be able to get some crosswalk signs here with some flashing lights. So, because a lot of children go across, and this is where a lot of the speeding goes. So we've continued to look at that. These were the crimes that were basically committed of those that were done in the Somerset area. You'll see the vehicle burglaries were actually all committed within about a 3-week period before Christmas, and they did find the gang that was doing that. Now, as Somerset continues to grow, and you heard Rob, and the usage here at the club has increased. You know, we look at maybe 50% more homes being built here. We have learned about several neighborhoods in the area who have started some initiatives where they actually have started their own neighborhood watch process. And what we've observed, my husband and I have observed since we've been here, remember we bought our home 2.5 years ago. Our home was basically vacant for 2 years. And we came out on holidays to see if we really wanted to retire here. And since we have moved in, and over those 2.5 years, we've seen a huge turnover in our neighborhood. When we bought our home, there were probably 9 homes on our street for sale. There are none now. And we've seen a lot of new neighbors come in. These homes now are full, and we don't know who they are. And so I was very interested in how these neighborhoods were looking, and because of the turnover in our neighborhood in the last 3 or 4 years, I think it really behooves us all to know of some of the efforts that are going on in the other neighborhoods. And if we as a neighborhood want to do those, fine. We want to give you those materials. We want to give you that information. And Rob is one of those neighborhoods. There's a neighborhood that's just by the 3rd roundabout. And they have developed a lot of good materials that I thought were very valuable. And I'm going to see if some of our neighbors want to also use some of them so that we can become a little more vigilant in our area and keep those crime rates low.
Can the groups meet here if they want to meet?
And so this room is reserve it. And, yeah, the usage of the clubhouse, so that's what it is.
I don't know how many of the folks picked this up. This is information about homeowner watches.
They were the handouts as you came in.
So I'm gonna just leave these here, and there's 2 different packets. Those are the different, so you need one of each of those. So we created a neighborhood watch at the top of the list, which is the 3rd roundabout. If you make a right, that entire area, 79 homes is top of the list. We did it because we had 2 events occur in a short period of time. George and Brenda, our neighbors who had a place up at Squaw, were burglarized on a New Year's Eve long weekend. And then Julie, one of our neighbors, was going to a yoga class here at 9 o'clock in the morning. And she returned, so she left, 3rd roundabout, yoga class, came back at 10:30 and she was broken into. And we said, what the hell is going on? And we knew that there was no way to go ahead and do those kind of burglaries unless folks somehow or another actually knew that the places were vacant at that particular time. You don't break into a house in an hour and a half period of time unless you've been watching. And when we started talking after Julie, Shannon, neighbor, and myself, we said, yeah, did you notice that van? And so we got interested in doing the neighborhood watch thing. So to initiate a neighborhood watch, this top sheet on this one thing will give you all a packet of information of how you do it. You need a captain to maintain the listing. I've already created the Excel spreadsheets to use for the listing and the authorization sheet. You need sub-captains, one for every 8 to 10 homes, 8 to 12 homes on the area that you're going to include. So we have 3 streets in Copper Knolls, 79 homes, so we have 8 captains to handle each of them. What you do is you get an authorization form like this, and this is what we did from surveying a lot of different neighborhood watch programs. And what it says is that here's the address, here's the contact information for people, whether you own or rent. And this is important because we found out that neighborhood watch programs, people have sometimes a hesitancy of providing information because they don't mind providing information to owners, but they have a hesitancy of providing it to renters because they don't know how long this renter's going to be there. They come in, they leave, they got the information. So we have this authorization sheet which you have to say you own or you rent. And then when we compile this information, we go ahead and create a map or a listing. This is Copper Knolls, color. Each of these colors here is one of the sub-captain's responsibilities. You then get an Excel spreadsheet that's color-coded down the side. In red, it has the sub-captain for each one of those. And for the owners, we put down, and actually whether they own or rent, we put whether they own or rent for every house. We put the first name of the people that the first names that they put, we don't use last names. For the owners, they get the home phone number, the cell phone numbers that they provide on the authorization sheet, and comments. We include comments about things like pets, health condition, folks, husband takes meds, things of that sort. We include the first names. It's entirely up to what people want to include, but we include the first names of everybody who lives in the house because these lists can also be used in the event of an emergency. If there was earthquakes, fire, or something, you'd like to know that 4 people were living in that house, 2 kids, 2 adults, or whatever it is. But again, no last name. And then for the renters that respond to this, we provide the exact same sort of listing, except we do not put in any telephone numbers for any owner that lives there. They get the same listing, the first names of folks in the emails and the comments. And we figure then that the owners that are living next to those renters, if they wish to share their telephone number with them because they know them, they've been there a long time with them, they're free to do so. But we don't go ahead and pass that out. The second packet that you have is what we actually give all of our folks when they come into our place the first time. This cover sheet is really important because it actually says what a neighborhood watch is. It isn't a vigilante group. What it is people actually being really alert to what's going on in the neighborhood. The two best quotes that we got from police agencies is police do not know your neighborhood as well as you and your neighbors, and most burglaries are witnessed, but witnesses don't realize it. The idea is that in Copper Knolls, people are walking their dog, they're taking strolls, and that they actually make a conscious effort to see what's going on in their neighborhood. And I'll tell you how this actually pays off. So after we started this, and everyone was kind of like being really vigilant, I was coming up Autumn Ridge, and there was a woman who was jogging up Autumn Ridge in the middle of the day, and most burglaries, home burglaries, actually occur between 10 o'clock on Tuesday and 2 o'clock on Thursday. And the reason why is because they know people are at work, they're not taking long weekends, that's the time to hit. So I'm driving up, and there's this woman jogging, and I didn't recognize her, and from going around the neighborhood enough, I got used to, if I don't recognize someone, I'm going to slow down and say, hi, my name's Brad. I don't know who you are. You know, who are you? You know, you live in the neighborhood, blah, blah, blah. And as I was starting to slow down, Robert and Tiffany come running out from their house across the lawn, and so I drive up to them and never talk to the lady, and they said, did you talk to Jason and Whitney? And I said, no, what's this? And they said, well, this van was here yesterday, and Jason and Whitney called us about it, and we saw the van, and we're just coming out to go ahead and take a picture of the van and the license plate number, and this person jogging up the street, 35 years old, Nike, iPod, everything, hops into the van and off they go. So the idea of just being alert in your neighborhood and seeing what's the usual pattern of things and noticing cars, things that aren't the usual item that you see in your neighborhood is the key to a neighborhood watch. There's a bunch of other information about neighborhood watches, how you report things, their phone numbers, things to do. You never confront somebody. All you need to end up doing is just noticing it. And if you notice it, and then call the sub-captain or captain. I mean, we're pretty united as a Copper Knolls community. And the coolest thing about having one of these listings is that it's brought all of us together. We do regular Super Bowl parties, and we know each other, and we wave, and we know folks by name. And so it's not to prevent crime, as you can see by the low crime rate we have in Somerset. It's actually to give even more of a sense of community for your neighborhood street. So, again, we'll put all this information up on the website. And if anyone else is interested in trying to form one and stuff, the hard legwork is already done. The authorization form is done. The Excel spreadsheets are done. The handouts are there. You just need to dig up somebody who's going to maintain that spreadsheet for your group and dig up some folks to go ahead and serve as sub-captains. One last thing. The one thing that they say when you're forming a neighborhood watch is that it's the personal contact of a sub-captain going to talk to their 8 to 12 neighbors. The way that it always works best is that if you live in this house and you know those 2 people there, the 2 people next to you, and the 4 people across from you, and everybody does that, then they know what their work schedules are, they know who they are, what they're supposed to do, who's who. And people respond when they know that they're going to actually get something back for taking the time and effort to go ahead and put something in. So it's not something you do through email, it's actually face-to-face contact. That's it, folks. And I think we've got close to an hour, which is what we try to do. No close. Very close. Very close. All right. Thank you, folks.